Hello, cooking enthusiasts. Today we have another theoretically quick episode, but that's what I said last week, and it ended up being an 8-minute video. Today we are talking about gnudi, and gnudi are probably the least known about Italian dumpling style pasta. They are originally from Tuscany, and what makes them very unique is the ratio of filling to casing. As you may have guessed, gnudi actually means naked, and that's not entirely accurate, but it is an incredibly thin layer of dough around balls of a ricotta-based filling. The way they achieve this is also very unique. Instead of rolling out dough very thin, they actually create the dumpling skin by burying the balls of filling in flour. So the moisture from the filling itself hydrates the flour, creating that very thin skin. As I mentioned, it's traditionally a ricotta-based filling with some other cheeses mixed in, and the flour they use is durum flour, which is slightly different from semolina, semolina being a byproduct of making durum flour, but the blog Ideas in Food has several times made gnudi by replacing durum flour with semolina that's been more finely ground, and that's also what I used. I eventually want to do a real deep dive on this style of dumpling and fiddle with the filling and the shape, but they are pretty time consuming to experiment with. So I am just going to give you my first success in making a slightly experimental gnudi. The basis of my filling was still ricotta, in this case I believe about a pound of store-bought ricotta, more on homemade ricotta in a few weeks. But the first addition I am making, and something again I haven't personally seen in this style of dumpling, is some protein. You could use pancetta or bacon, but I was lucky enough to have some of my grandmother's prosciutto, so I used that. Both cooked and raw prosciutto are delicious, so I cooked off a chunk, searing the outside but leaving the inside relatively raw before chopping as finely as possible so it would incorporate into the dumpling filling. My other addition for the filling was roasted celery. I literally just took a bunch of celery and roasted it, I believe, at 400 Fahrenheit for maybe 10-15 minutes. I probably could have roasted them a little longer to reduce the moisture, but they still worked. The celery was roughly chopped and then pulsed in a food processor until fairly fine before being folded into the ricotta. The prosciutto was very salty, of course, so that was the primary seasoning for my mixture, besides some generous cracks of pepper, of course. The traditional shape is balls, but I decided to make little quenelles. Quenelles are little pointy egg-like shapes that you make with 1 or 2 spoons. I just really like these shapes, and it was a bit difficult to roll my very damp mixture into balls. As I also mentioned, the flour here is semolina that's been blitzed in a food processor until fine. You have to be pretty generous with your flour mixture to ensure that they're coated on all sides and well buried, but you can harvest some of it back at the end. Now for the difficult part of any Gnudi recipe. The dumplings need to be buried like this in the fridge for 4 days total. That's really how long it takes for the flour on the surface to properly hydrate. I tried doing them sooner and it did not work. Even after the full 4 days, my dumplings were very delicate, so I simmered them pretty gently for about 30 to 60 seconds and then gently covered them in a second layer of flour before immediately simmering again. After the dumplings are cooked, I recommend freezing some for later or pan frying them with some butter, oil, and herbs, similar to other Italian dumplings. They are definitely a bit difficult, but once you get them right, they are a delicious meal. My particular filling worked out really well, and I'm definitely going to be experimenting more with Gnudi in the future. If you have any questions about this recipe or even just food in general, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.